Welcome to Failing for You, where I'll fail so you don't have to, or even better yet, so you can too. Hey guys, I'm so glad you could join me today on the discussion of how to start a podcast. Now, this is something I have a very fresh perspective on because I don't know if you've noticed, but this is the very first episode of my podcast. So I am just right out the gates and I'm going to tell you about what I've done so far to start my podcast. Obviously, it worked if you're here listening now. Now, obviously, the premise of my podcast is lessons learned from failing. So yeah, there's going to be some failures that have happened in the process of getting here. I had to admit, it wasn't like the easiest thing, but it's not impossible. I would say podcasting is just so popular now that it's a bit tedious to figure out like what you want to do, how you want to do it, trying to find an original name, an original topic, all of the above. But we're going to get into that and I'm going to tell you about how I went about it, things that I feel like I failed at along the way, and some future failures I'm a bit weary of, but how I'm going to go about them. So let's get into it, and we're going to start right off the bat with how to start a podcast. I've narrowed it down to 10 steps, which I think isn't too bad. So step 1, have an idea you're comfortable talking about and genuinely enjoy. Now, the reason I say this is so important is because if you're actually going to have to sit down and make the podcast, then you're going to want to be interested in what you're talking about, or people are going to be able to tell that you don't want to be there. It's like, it would just be so unenjoyable for you, for your listeners, and I assume that just doesn't go too well. I'm not going to say what does go well because obviously this is my first episode and who knows, it could be a total flop. But from all my research, I've heard you should enjoy what you're talking about. Now, the next part, which I found to be so hard, and it took me a long time to get what I wanted, and that is making an original name. Now, I don't know if there's any sort of like trademark or legal issues when it comes to naming, and if you have to have an original name for certain reasons, but obviously if someone is looking up your podcast, you don't want them to find somebody else's with the same name. So mine is Failing for You. Now, you want it to be about 4 words or less, and you want it to try to encapsulate what you're going to be talking about, but also not pigeonhole yourself. So the reason I stuck with Failing for You, which I had, a million other things I wanted to do, was because I felt like it was a good name that would express that I want to be trying new things, or talk about things I have tried that I was, not comfortable with doing at first because I was afraid I was going to fail at it. And then I did fail. Like, I failed miserably, but it's stuff that I ended up eventually succeeding at. I live to tell the tale. And my idea of my podcast would be somewhere where you can go and listen to someone who has a relatable story to the path of success that you want to achieve as well, and then how I got there. And as well as like I said, a lot of times we get like these steps of how to do something, but we don't hear about the mistakes people make along the way, because hindsight is 20/20, and perspective is such a valuable thing to gain, but you can't gain that unless you go through the process, and the process of learning how to do something new usually includes failure. So I want to really get into that topic in my podcast and talk about that it's okay to fail, that like failing is a good thing, because if you're failing, that means that you're pushing your limits and you're trying something new. And if you fail methodically, then you can take those lessons learned and apply them and get better and eventually succeed. I say if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, but who knows? I'm just one of those people who's like not naturally good at things. And so I have to try really hard and like work very hard at figuring out how to do them. And so I'm just bound to fail along the way. And I'm okay with that. I don't fear rejection the way I used to when I was younger. And I'll get into that in later episodes and kind of teach you how to fearlessly fail like I do. But yeah, so that was step 2. You need to have an original name. A way to make sure it's original is just typing it into the podcast host you listen to. So go into Spotify, type in the name, And probably the first 10 to 20 names you think of are gonna be taken, and that's okay, just keep trying, all right? Step 3, decide on the level of quality of audio you wanna have. So this was a hard decision for me. I know this sounds silly, but like you go on Amazon, maybe that's where you like to shop, or Google, and you say podcasting microphone. You see things that are like $10, and then you see things that are like $200, and you're like, okay, but like what do I actually need? Now, I would say it just kind of depends on like if you are waiting too long to make it perfect and you really want it to be super duper perfect, then consider that might be like something where you're like, is audio something that has to be perfect? Maybe, maybe not. Or if you're just like, I want it to be good enough and I just want to get it out there. Guys, like you can record on your phone. Like it's fine. It'll catch the audio. You can use like just your phone microphone. You can use headphones. For me, I opted in and I got this Samson the Q2U microphone. It was like $50 on Amazon. It's supposed to be a dynamic microphone, which means it's not going to get all the background noise that's going on, and it's just going to be like a decent quality, but it still has a USB so you can plug it into your computer. You don't need like one of those sound mixer things. I'm not a sound engineer and I don't intend on being one anytime soon. So I just wanted to get something I can do that was more plug and play. So I would say for your options of audio level quality, you can be fine with just doing it with your phone. You can be fine using your headphones and the speakers and microphones that are in those, or mid-level baby steps. I would say the Q2U Samson. I can link this in the show notes below if you think my audio sounds decent. I'd say this is a good first start. There's some interesting like YouTube videos you can watch on picking an even better microphone and doing like sound mixers and all that. But for me, if you're just getting started, like don't invest too much money right away. I knew I wanted to do a podcast and I know I'm going to stick with it because that's just my personality. So to me, like getting this microphone is a pretty like good investment, $50 or $60, whatever it was. That, and I also make YouTube videos. So maybe I can use it for that as well. And with Amazon, typically you get like free 30-day returns. So if you think $60 is a lot to invest, then just hold on to it. And if you don't do much with your podcast or end up actually doing it at all, just return it. It's a pretty low risk investment. And if you decide to keep it, not that expensive. So that's my piece on microphones. If you want to get more complicated with it, then I would say find another channel to listen to because I just don't know yet. All right. Next, this part, oh gosh, okay, now we're getting to the more confusing stuff. We're going to be choosing a audio editing software. Oh my gosh, there's so many out there. There's a lot of free ones, there's a lot of paid for ones, and it's like, it really just depends on the level of like mastery you want to do. So no matter what, you have to record it somewhere, right? And then depending on the hosting site you use, you're going to have to upload it in an MP3 or a WAV file, which is like .wav. And so you're going to have to obviously record it. Now, the part where like the audio editing software you use becomes more important is like if you want to make a jingle at the beginning, like I made mine. I would say that's something I kind of failed at. I don't think it's very good. I'm using Soundtrap for my audio editing right now, and it's a little bit above my comfort level. Like I don't really know how to use it that well, so that's why I feel like my jingle at the beginning is kind of bad, and I'm hoping that I could get someone to help me with that at some point or another. So that's one of those things where it's like, I didn't want to spend so much time perfecting it to where I just never put it out there. So I would say find an audio software like GarageBand. If you have an iPhone, it's just free. It's already on there. You can record there, download your files and upload it. I'm using Soundtrap. That's how I went about it. I don't think I'm going to stick with it because it's just so confusing, but it works. So we'll see, TBD on that, but that's something I would consider I've kind of failed at. And my lesson learned would be just pick something for now, figure out what you like and don't like about it, and then use that when you're filtering through what you want for a new audio software. Also start with something free, like don't pay for it yet. Like you really just don't need to spend money right away, because it's like just make sure this is something you want and that you actually need the paid for features. So that's my step 4, was choosing an audio editing software. Step 5, this is another step I found to be a little confusing at first, which is why I'm making it its own step, and that is finding a hosting platform to host your RSS feed. So if you're listening to me on Spotify right now, I didn't directly upload this to Spotify. What I did was I found a hosting website. The website I use is called Buzzsprout. I'll link that below in the show notes as well. Buzzsprout is a hosting website where you can upload your audio, and it's kind of where your audio lives. So the reason that hosting websites exist is because sound files take up a lot of memory. So they're able to put that up in their cloud storage, or I don't know if it's cloud specifically, but they put it in their storage. That way you don't have to fill up your computer, because you would need a lot of storage to have multiple episodes or seasons or however far you go. So that's the reason that you use a hosting software, which I might have misspoken. Maybe you can upload to Spotify directly, but I'm pretty sure it needs to be through a hosting feed. So I used Buzzsprout. There's some other ones I've seen. But something I would consider is that some of them will automatically upload them to certain platforms for you. Like Buzzsprout, if I want to upload it to Spotify, all I have to do is click the upload button to Spotify in my directories feed. I love that, because now I don't have to create a separate account, go in there, and however the heck you're supposed to do that. Not entirely certain. So that's why I find a hosting website to be very helpful. Apple is less compatible with this, but it still works, but it's not as streamlined. So for Apple, I still had to go through my Apple ID, and I haven't even fully gotten through that step yet. I hopefully will by the time you're hearing this. But for Apple, you have to go through, set up your page, and then you copy and paste your RSS feed in it. So Buzzsprout will still give you the RSS feed and the copy link, and then you go copy and paste that into Apple Podcast. So it's there. It's compatible with quite a few. That's why I chose it. And honestly, I started off on another one. I don't even remember what it's called, but it was a Spotify partner. And then I was like, oh no, what if this doesn't work with Apple? And I got so overwhelmed with trying to figure out what to use that I ended up just landing on Buzzsprout. And I was like, this seems good enough. I'm going to go with it. So I hope it continues to be good. And I guess I'll let you guys know if I end up changing. Okay, next. Let's see. Step 7, making channel art. Okay, so if you're watching or listening to my podcast now, you will see that on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening is going to have the picture that is of me and says failing for you with Jordan Yates. So this is important. It's kind of like your name. You want someone to look at it and it catch their eye, them be interested in it and think, I really want to listen to that podcast. It's probably similar with this interest that I have. Sorry about that. To get a sip of water. So yeah, I struggled with this too. Another thing I think I kind of failed at, but I just did it anyways because I didn't want to spend more time than I already had trying to perfect this image. I figured I know they say you don't want to keep changing your branding and you want it to stay the same, but guys, this is episode 1. I still have time to continue to figure this out, and I'm pretty sure that the 6 people that have listened to this podcast so far aren't going to be mad at me if I change my channel art. But your channel art is a step that you make because you want to be able to have something where someone sees that and they recognize, oh, that's a XYZ podcast, or I want someone to see my failing for you and oh, that's that one, and look at it, be excited by it, and then actually go and listen to it. Or you at least want it to somewhat captivate what you're talking about. I don't know if mine does, but we'll see. We'll do some beta testing, but it's definitely, whether or not you do a good job at it, it is a step of the process, which is why I listed it. Next, okay. This one is going to be very on brand for our podcast. Fearlessly promoting. Guys, do not put all this work into your podcast and do all those other horrendous steps I just talked about and then be too embarrassed to promote it. put it everywhere. Put it on your socials. Guys, like, who cares if it's not perfect? You're putting yourself out there. Like, you should be proud of that. And you should just like say, you know what? Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you think your target audience is, put it out there, promote it, tell them what it's about. Try to get like a clear sentence or two to like captivate what your message is, and then say, hey guys, this is my new podcast. Like, come and listen. Sorry about that. My software is telling me that I needed to start another recording because I don't want to lose it after 15 minutes. So side tip, continue recording, but then stop it every 15 minutes. All right, just don't forget to restart it. Okay, so yeah, fearlessly promote. Guys, don't be too worried about what people think of you, because honestly, like, if they think like, oh, you're so silly, you're so dumb for doing this, and then they take a screenshot and they send it to all their friends, and then all their friends are like, oh, they're so dumb, then they're gonna go hate listen, and then guess what? That's more listeners. So yeah, you can like really turn anything into a positive situation. So if you're confident in what you're doing, let people know. Put it out there and don't be afraid to promote yourself. Okay, next. Now, this is something, and I do not say it lightly. I know this isn't technically like how to make your podcast step, but step 9 is going to be do not overpromise and underdeliver. So don't tell them, oh, I'm going to come out with episodes twice a week or weekly or monthly or whatever it is. Like, let's like try making a few episodes first and say, hey, like, I think I'm going to put episodes out bi-weekly, or just don't promise like a recurring time anyways. Just like put it out there and don't say, hey, I'll see you in a week if it's not true. We want to build trust within our listeners, and I mean, there's nothing worse than like a broken promise. So just don't overpromise what you're going to deliver and then not actually do it. I know your intentions will be good when you say it, but sometimes like intentions don't matter if the follow through isn't there. So just tread lightly there. It's not a huge deal. Like, you can just completely glaze over it and, you know, not even mention it, but it's up to you. That's just a tip from me. My whole 1 episode in, I think I'm an expert giving tips. All right. Number 10. I don't know if you're ready to hear this. Okay. I can't take myself seriously. Have fun. Like, why wouldn't you? Okay. Step 10 is have fun, because that's kind of the point of this. Maybe you're here because you want to make money podcasting. Well, guys, like step 10 of your first 10 steps is have fun, because like that kind of goes back to step 1, which is enjoy what you're talking about. Like, no one's going to pay to sponsor a podcast where someone is just absolutely miserable, unless that's a niche that I'm just not aware of. But as far as I'm concerned, people want to listen to people who like talking about what they're talking about, or at least have some sort of like emotion towards it or passion towards it. So just like go into it and try to enjoy yourself if you can. If not, maybe consider talking about something else or picking a new topic. But yeah, so those are my 10 tips. I hope that was helpful. I know it's not like a super clear cut thing, because like I said, like I don't have a tried and true method. This is how I've gone about it, and this is my first episode. And if you're listening, then it worked. Okay. So this is a method that might actually work. There is so many podcasters out there that are really experienced and really good at this, and they probably have a lot better tips than I do. Like, that's cool. Like, I'm not competing with them. I'm just saying that I am making my whole premise around not being afraid to put yourself out there, not being afraid to fail. And I just want to be transparent in the steps I take towards these things that I said I was afraid to do. So if I was nervous about making a podcast, the whole point of this show would be giving you the perspectives on what I've learned in the process. That and the research phase, like, is really easy to get stuck in. Like, sometimes you end up looking at so many hosting sites, so many different like video and sound editing softwares, and you just end up like getting stuck in trying to be perfect where you don't do anything. And you're just like in this loop of trying to like convince yourself maybe you should try it, maybe you shouldn't, and then you're like, oh, but it has to be this software and this XYZ. But like, guys, just just go for it, okay? And that's all I'm saying is the steps I took, that's how I went for it. If you want to go for it how I did, knock yourself out. If you want to try to do it better, learn from what I'm saying. For one, like I said, I do not love Soundtrap as my software for my audio editing. I hope Soundtrap doesn't hear me say that though, because I don't want them to make me lose my audio. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so just learn from my lessons and mistakes and go for it. And if you're nervous about making a podcast, guys, just message me. There should be a link below where you could submit some questions and concerns. If this is something that you want to do, then I'm here for you, okay? That's the whole point. We're trying to build a community. So that's all I have on how to start a podcast. Now for the future, we're going to have a segment called Failures, Lessons Learned, and Questions. I'm going to have a link where you can submit those 3 things. So maybe it's something that you have failed on and learned from, and you want to talk about how you learned it, or like the lessons you learned or the perspective you've gained. Or it could be something that you're afraid of failing and you want to know, is it something that I've done before? Or maybe just some tips on how to get over that fear of failing something, or some tips on how to get started, or just general questions. You can ask me questions about me, about my podcast, about my YouTube channel. I also have a YouTube channel. I'll link that as well. But yeah, I mean, I want this to be interactive. I want to hear from you. I want to keep a conversation going. So in future episodes, hopefully we'll have a segment at the end where there are the failures, lessons learned, and questions. But until then, guys, I am signing out of here. Thank you so much if you made it through the entire first episode of my podcast. If you would, guys, you might as well like and subscribe or follow and let me know how I did. And if you want to give me some tips on how to improve, I'm all ears. I love constructive criticism. So I'll see you next time. And until then, I'll be failing for you. So